There we go. Welcome to Bill and Ammon's Bogus Hangout. Uh, we're going to have a good show, I think. I have people introduce themselves. Uh, Doc, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us what you're up to.
Hey everybody, Doc Sheldon here, Intrinsic Value SEO and Search News Central. And I'm just same thing as everybody else, just trying to take advantage of the weekend to get caught up on the loose ends that I've been ignoring too long and still plugging away at business. As Terry likes to say, trying to get out there and make all kinds of money. I haven't figured, I'm getting out there, but I haven't made all that money yet. So I'm halfway home, I guess.
That's on the to-do list, right?
There you go.
Terry, introduce yourself.
Terry Van Horn, SEO Dojo and SEO Pros, and I guess international website builders. Any three, you'll find me there. Just doing, the usual, plugging away at it, working on some PPC, and finally got a client site totally rebuilt from scratch, nothing, to full redevelop in 2 weeks. So I'm
good busy 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was busy. That's for sure.
Tim, how you doing?
Tim, I'm fine. Tim Calling, A Servant's Heart Web Design and Marketing. Boy, this is not exactly a lively group today because I'm going to add to the same litany here. Like, well, getting work done, trying to make money for my clients, and situation normal. But you know what? Normal is good sometimes. Normal meaning no bad supplies or surprises. A letter, or a week that goes by without a letter from the IRS or a new crisis that affects me in the political realm or whatever. I'm happy.
I'd like to get some of that normal if you have a surplus.
I'm trying.
I'm Bill Slosky. I'm the author at SEO by the Sea and director of SEO research for Go Fish Digital. I'm trying to make money and trying to keep away from letters from the IRS.
There you go.
And I wrote about rich search results and how you get them and what kind of information they contain. I found the first patent from Google I've seen that expressly is about rich results.
And rich results, is that rich snippets or universal search?
They refer to them as rich results, even though when it first came out, they were referring to those as rich snippets.
Okay.
Did you say that's something you just wrote, Bill?
I just wrote on the Go Fish Digital website. Yeah.
Oh.
It's one about book rich results, and it looks like they are doing that with knowledge panels right now. So I don't know if they'll switch over to rich results in knowledge panels or in search results.
You haven't seen a blend, Bill, where there's knowledge panel and rich results, like answers?
The knowledge panels seem different than the rich results. There are ways that they differ. The rich results sometimes get triggered by a query that contains information that's within the rich result. Sometimes knowledge panels are triggered only by the name of the organization or entity it's about. But the rich results, it's sometimes certain words cause it to appear in a query that are different than just the entity name. It's like when you search for weather, Carlsbad. You get the little answer box with sun if you're having a sunny day.
Right.
Yeah.
And it would be a knowledge panel for Carlsbad, I suppose.
No, they might show the forecast for Carlsbad though.
Yeah, I'm seeing. I just did that, and it shows a graphic in the not as a separate knowledge panel, but as a result at the top of the organic listings from weather.com. It looks like.
But no knowledge panel for Carlsbad.
Nothing else. No.
So could you kind of say then if there's a rich result, it's going to be harder to get a knowledge panel and vice versa?
Well, the example I used in the blog post was for the book The Sun Also Rises, which is a Hemingway book.
Right.
And that returns a knowledge panel. It contains a lot of the stuff that the patent was saying a rich result would contain, like information from a publisher, a price, links to booksellers. Not a surprise there that they provide ways for booksellers to get money off a search like that.
But they also show library listings. I'm looking at it right now.
Right.
And also, people also search for other books. And there is actually, at least as I'm looking at it right now, I guess this is rich results. People also ask, and then questions. So, yeah.
Those are referred to as related questions.
Related questions, okay.
And it seems like they're there to keep people in search results longer, to keep people on Google longer.
Everything is
just like the related searches were meant to keep people on Google longer.
Right.
Yeah. They're a dog that isn't afraid to use an old trick over.
It's not a bad trick.
No, that's what I mean. If it works, rinse and repeat, right? Just like SEO.
If they are truly related questions, if somebody searches for the first one, they may be attracted to the other ones. They may click on those and find out what's going on there too.
Well, it's certainly a trick that we've tried in our business too, So.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this particular case, it offers searches related to The Sun Also Rises. The Sun Also Rises movie, summary, review, meaning, and so forth. Interesting.
It kind of plays into the stuff that Ben Gomez was talking about the other day too, on the Google blog, about the next
20 years of Google.
Yeah, the next 20 years, improving search for the next 20 years.
Instead of providing answers, they're plugging into the customer journey.
Yeah, well, I think I don't know that it's going to be casting that providing answers by the wayside. Kind of goes hand in hand, really.
Yeah.
But certainly still trying to keep us on Google as long as possible. Should be interesting, though. I think it's going to be a good indicator of how well their AI efforts are progressing to see how well it works out.
They just said they're going to plug Google Lens into image search on desktop. It was part of mobile image search.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that. I did see that they're talking about making some major changes to the way Google image search works, but I didn't see any mention of Lens.
Yeah.
I think they're saying by the end of the year, end of the fourth quarter, something like that, they should be rolling that out.
Not sure.
I read what's in the chat there this morning. It was pretty interesting.
A Lens ideally is supposed to work off of schema. It's supposed to, if you like search for a band and there's the band's website has event schema, they might show you a result that shows that event schema. So you can go to a concert if they're advertising one because that schema exists. So it's another good reason to start using schema if you're not. And a lot of people still aren't.
I have thought, with no particular rationale behind it, it just occurred to me a long time ago that when they try with limited success to get us to implement something like schema, like for instance, the old author publisher markup for the SERPs, there was some limited success, but I always felt like the goal there, and possibly the same with schema, is to get enough of a body of information together to let their algos learn so that the algos can then begin to generate that themselves. I don't think they're expecting that many sites to use schema. I think they're expecting to have to plug schema in themselves within the algorithms to tie all that data together.
I've seen people want schema for things like review, rating, stars.
Yeah.
They expect and anticipate more people will click on their search result if they see more stars associated with a specific search result. Or if you have things like events.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a couple clients really excited about showing off their events. One of them was a university. They wanted to make sure their events were showing because they hold lots of events. And if they have them in search results, a lot more people see them.
Sure.
Especially if they have the schema markup there as well. They stand out on the SERP. I kind of agree with Doc. However, more and more schema is becoming mainstream. I remember when there was hardly no video on the internet too. Why? Because it was a pain in the arse to implement. Yep. Schema is becoming more and more a part of WordPress at some point. So, like for instance, the web page schema is almost in almost every theme now.
Yep.
So, sometimes incorrectly.
Yeah, there's that too, Bill. There's that, but everything is done, in my opinion, incorrectly in WordPress. It's a cockamamie abomination.
Don't
hold back, Terry.
Yeah. Tell us how you really feel.
When a theme is set up so that all the pages show off creative works, and you have a surgeon's website, so that his page is talking about different surgical procedures, and the schema for those is saying that it's a creative work. That isn't quite right.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a stretch.
Okay.
Bill searches for the mute button.
But more and more, it'll become part of the developer's toolbox. I really believe that. That it's becoming more and more mainstream.
It's certainly getting to become a lot more prevalent. I think part of it too is the fact that there are now a number of plugins that will actually implement, hopefully to some degree of accuracy, schema for you automatically.
Yes, some better than others.
That's a big caveat, boy.
I know, but it isn't the sort of thing. Technologically, it's not the sort of thing that's difficult to build a plugin to do. It's the judgment on what's the right class, what's the right way to classify.
And that's where there's a lot of misunderstanding.
Exactly.
Because whether you pick organization or local business, they're almost the same thing to Google, unless you're in local search. And then it would make perhaps a bit of a difference. But I don't think in the end, it's all one big organization, right? I really believe the subclasses, if you get it in the right main class, that's the main thing.
Well, and I think that Google can probably detect and correct some blatant things as well. If Tim put his name in as the organization class, they're going to pick up on that. Now, will they just decide to ignore the schema markup for that page, or will they fix it? That is the question.
Chances are they'll decide to ignore it.
That would be my guess. Yeah.
And also, okay, if I pick organization, right, instead of local business, but I have a local business listing on Google, I think they're going to know it's a local business and think they just, it's still good schema. It's just not down to the level.
Of course, ideally, we would get a notification in GSC that, hey, you might want to look at this, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Because no one really knows if it makes a difference whether you call it a local business or an organization.
Yeah.
I can understand, though, Doc, why you had that feeling or that suspicion, because they've done that before. The famous example, I don't know why this one just kind of tickles me, the 1-800-GOOG or whatever it was service, where they ran a voice-driven search utility for a while, and then after a year or so, they quit offering it. And if you tried to go look at the webpage for it, it said, "Thank you for all the words."
They ran that for 4 years.
That was a long time.
They did millions of free searches for people.
And they were
it was a phone directory, automated phone directory.
And they were refining their voice recognition, apparently, or some such thing.
Yep.
And they told people that.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't hiding it.
At some point, I think they perhaps justifiably could suspect that their tools would do a better job of indexing and classifying a web page than we do.
Well, I think what it boils down to, Tim, is those engineers can sit down and design one kick-ass algorithm, but it's going to have bugs. It's going to need some fine-tuning, and the best way to fine-tune that is against a smaller body of data that they've had an opportunity to go through and kind of debug, probably human-wise, and then use that as the learning reservoir for the algorithms.
Yeah.
And then, they can certainly get better at it. And especially, you and I can look at the same page and come up with different classification ideas for some aspects of that page. And an algorithm can at least standardize.
I think we're saying the same thing. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. No, I'm not arguing. I think it's just to stress the fact that a lot of what they're doing when they ask us to supply information is to give them a seed of information to teach the algo, to allow the algos to teach themselves.
We're training the machine.
Yeah. And, to me, the beauty of that is that unlike, you and I, depending upon our mood, how much sleep we had, or the way we read a particular paragraph, we might disagree on a classification from one moment to the next, but an algorithm won't. It will be consistent. Even if it's wrong, it's going to be consistent at least. And that's something, that consistency can be caught and detected and repaired. Whereas, where you and I might disagree on a classification is a much fuzzier target.
If you dig into, at least when I've dug into the schema, classifications to try to assign the right category to something, boy, some of those seem to be really wacky to me. It's interesting.
I worry more about the items that go along with that main class. I want to get those exact, because if they're wrong, that's going to be more of a problem than maybe missing a class, calling it an organization rather than a local business.
Yeah.
Right, but when you're a plumber and you're using schema for medical services.
Well, it depends. I mean, are you a urologist? It might be accurate.
I would say that's more than a little off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, now you're just being nitpicky, Bill.
And I'm thinking back to when the themes automatically supply the schema because they're built into the theme.
Oh, yeah.
And the designer wasn't paying much attention to it. It does happen. Google has written a paper where they talk about the importance, the helpfulness of having lots of data. And they've said with lots and lots of data on a subject, we can have algorithms that don't work as well. Because having the excess amount of data makes all the difference. So they like collecting all that data.
Help smooth it out some, the bigger set they have.
It's why they did all that Goog 1-800-Goog stuff, because they recorded lots and lots of voices. It gave them a lot of options to make decisions that didn't rely as much on algorithms that helped.
It might also uncover more variables in speech and stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
If I remember, you say, well, I want to, it would say, what are you looking for? And I'd say like Chinese food. And it would say, plumbing supplies? You go, no. And it would come back and say, oh, hardware? No. Oh, Chinese food.
Pretty much.
Steve used to joke about that too, Siri search.
Oh, Siri is crazy. Well, and here we go down that road here with all these voice search tools. Although, honestly, I'm not jumping into that yet. I know some of you guys have now bought either a Google Home or Alexa or something, but I don't want to waste money on it yet.
The future of SEO may be in personal assistance.
Eventually.
Maybe.
And
yeah, I wouldn't be investing a lot in it yet.
I think it's worth buying a Google Home or a Alexa and just playing with it.
Just to learn maybe marketing opportunities by having it around and using it. I see that. But as far as the search and how it may affect my job, not yet. It's kind of like mobile. They said mobile this year for 5 years before and it's just getting here now.
I know you guys. Some of you just now are buying smartphones. Come on now.
Well,
I wrote a blog post in 2009 on making our sites mobile friendly.
Yeah,
it's like
I got my state-of-the-art 4 here. So.
And when it finally came in, if you think, Bill, when it first came out, it was, make that separate mobile site.
Oh, yeah.
What are you undoing now if you did that then?
Yep.
Gosh, I vividly remember at a party once, probably around 2001 in Silicon Valley, arguing with somebody about why the hell would I ever want my mobile phone to be merged in with my Palm Pilot? Who on their right mind would want that to happen? Oh, Lord.
I think that, it's definitely going towards voice search is going to be where we're going to have to be focused at some point. But I don't, like Terry, I don't think we're talking about the next year or two. I think it's probably 4 or 5 years down the road.
I think I'll be retired. Literally probably planting the ground.
Rumor has it you'll be retired before I have to decide on my next grocery.
Yeah, but Terry, you'll be saying, Alexa, buy me some new chef's knives.
There you go.
No, but for one thing, I don't want to spend the money yet. Partly because I'm frugal, but I don't know which one to get yet. That would be the better long-term choice,
Right.
for my home, but also professionally.
All things search-wise with Google, I treat it like a Windows software update. You wait until the second service pack comes out.
Yeah, isn't that true?
Wait for the smoke to clear. Yeah.
Do not be a pioneer. Think about
yes,
movies.
don't be a pioneer.
At some point in time, though, when you go buy a refrigerator, you won't have any choice. They'll all become voice enabled.
Yeah.
With little panels on that show off computer screens. It's where you see the manual for the refrigerator.
Yeah, and you know how you know that, Bill? As far as Alexa and those kind of products go,
yeah,
they're starting to wire them into new homes. That's a big, that's an eye opener that this thing is not going to go away. It's only going to get bigger. It's going to be like the internet. It starts out a select few have it, and next thing, if you don't have it, you're some kind of, what are you living under a stone?
Well, there's a fine line between knowing when to make the move and when to, remember, remember in the old Westerns, pioneers, they ended up face down in the mud with arrows in their backs, man.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing I think it's going to slow down, at least, if not even potentially kill the voice-actuated stuff, is the scares around IoT vulnerability and no regulation whatsoever for the hardware protection and firmware protection. So, that's right now, if I wanted to go out and buy a Google Home or something, I could, but I'm not going to put one in my house.
I worry about that.
Are you afraid the Russians are going to hack your refrigerator and spoil a little food?
Terry, I tell you what, I have a security system with a camera outside that's wireless.
Oh yeah, right. You live in Mexico. It's understandable.
No, but I'm saying it makes a wireless connection back to the hub, and the hub has tight security between itself and my cable hub. Okay.
Right.
But there's zero security between the camera and the security system hub.
Oh, I see. So that
anybody can stand 30 feet outside my front wall, and they can get into my home network. Okay, a 10-year-old kid can do it. A hacker could do it in seconds. Okay, that's my concern, and that's a camera. Okay, it's a data line. Okay, that's all it is. It's a wireless data line, an avenue to get in. So, when you start doing, whether it be a thermostat or a camera, everybody thinks that their home thermostat is so innocuous. That's not a threat. Nobody's going to try to hack that.
Right.
It might as well be your fucking Wi-Fi. It's the same thing. It's just as vulnerable and just as easy to achieve access. That's my concern. And I think that if enough widespread concern grows around that aspect, that could keep people from really embracing a lot of this overlap between voice search and IoT, because there is an awful lot of overlap there. I think that a lot of people are recognizing that you're basically talking about the same doghouse, just two entrances,
Yeah. I think it'll work off the Wi-Fi myself so that the other stuff's not vulnerable. Well, it's vulnerable as if your Wi-Fi is.
It could be a separate Wi-Fi, certainly, but then you have the problem of the remote access. Now how good is it to get into from your smartphone when you're downtown?
Well, it doesn't take much to add a piece to the refrigerator that says, "Do you detect a Wi-Fi?" It says yes. You plug in your code, your security code, and you're good to go. It's running off your Wi-Fi. They'll come up with something like that, Doc. You know why? Because people will stop buying fridges if they, like you, think it's going to breach their security elsewhere.
Well, for instance, my system is a Sage, okay? Supposedly one of the best out there. I got it free as part of a review deal, okay? And it validates the connection between every remote device and the hub upon making the connection. Now, if that connection exists for 18 days or 18 months, it validated once. Thank you very much. Don't need to do it again. I already trust you. So
Right.
now it's an open pipeline. So all somebody has to do is get into that camera or thermostat or whatever, and they're into my Wi-Fi. That's the see. There's no standard yet, and I think there definitely has to be, or we're going to have.
There will be. There has to be, or it don't work. If everyone is vulnerable because they put Wi-Fi in every refrigerator, eventually everyone's going to sue the refrigerator company for making them vulnerable.
Yep.
Right? You know, that class action's pretty big in the States. You know what I mean? Let's line up for free money.
But it's going to have a big impact because, you know, when you start putting that kind of hardware into the equipment, that drives the cost up. When you start putting that kind of development work into the software, that drives the cost up. When you start getting a lot of products out there that are required suddenly by some regulatory regulation have to be retrofitted, like a callback on a car, now you're really driving the cost up. They're going to recover that money from you and me, okay? And that's going to put the technology more out of reach to some people because the expense just went up. So it's going to slow it down. What should be a 2-year process will become a 6 or 7 year process.
Yeah. Or people just won't buy refrigerators with that feature. And the companies will get smart and say, hey, we got all these refrigerators here. What are we going to do with them?
You know, there's another aspect of all this that we're not talking about, and that is where the device itself, the Alexa, I mean the Echo or whatever, listens when we're not expecting it. I have one of those Samsung TVs that I bought probably 5 years ago now that was the subject of all those big exposés about how they were listening. You know, theoretically, Samsung could hear what you were saying in your living room as you were watching TV. Well, I'm not really all that excited about having a device in my home that is listening potentially all the time. You know, not because I'm ashamed of anything that we're talking about, but we talk about private things too. You know, so I don't know. It all still makes me a little bit nervous.
I get a kick out of people that say that that's bullshit. They don't listen to you. I'll say, okay, how is it that I can sit across the room and say Xbox on, and it hears me and does it if the fucking thing isn't listening?
Exactly. Exactly. So
it may not be passing information on, it may not be parsing it and recording it, but it is listening. And if it's listening, it can be doing those other things. And Xbox One was one that they found was, in fact, sending this stuff home.
Wow. That's just... Ugh.
It's just Microsoft collecting a little data. I mean, what the hell?
What could go wrong?
What's the biggie?
If you have nothing to hide, you don't have to worry is about the weakest argument I've ever heard.
You know, what are they going to do? They going to publish it? I don't think so. I mean,
I'm actually
there's a point where they're listening, but they're probably just listening to learn from it, not, you know, use it. And I don't care what people use. If they're not printing it out there, what do I care if they make their technology better by listening to me?
And how about suddenly
they must be pretty bored by now.
What about suddenly, Terry, when there's some under the table, unannounced mandate from the government that Apple or Microsoft must make this backdoor available to some government agency, okay? Sure. And you don't know about it, and they've been gathering it for a year and a half, and all of a sudden now the NSA has it. Okay, that is not something that's outside the realm.
If you thought the NSA needed Apple to open that Apple phone, I don't think so.
But to collect the information that's recorded, maybe so. I don't know. You know, you can get all carried away with paranoid ideations here, but it's something to stop and think about.
It's disturbing. The possibilities are disturbing. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying I think that this is what Microsoft and Google are doing. In fact, I'm pretty sure in my mind that this is absolutely outside of what Google would be willing to do, provided they had the ability to make that decision on their own. But under a federal order, it might be a different thing.
Google
So-
could be the CIA. We don't know.
For
Definitely.
all we know, yeah. They could be a subdivision of DARPA, yeah. But
They
Are
could
all
be
the
anything. I
helicopters
mean,
black?
I mean, it
just-
wasn't uncommon for the CIA to use operatives with the telephone companies when they were expanding Bell
Yep.
all over the world. I
Yep.
mean, that was standard procedure, was it not?
yes, it was.
Well, there you go. Do you think they're not using Google the same way? Yeah, I would be surprised if they weren't.
Well, one of the beauties from Google's standpoint is, I don't know if Microsoft is the same way, perhaps to some degree, is that Google is so compartmentalized in their information internally that it would be difficult for anybody to surreptitiously gather much usable information out of Google. It would take a lot of agents in there to be able to put together enough to even begin to do anything with it. But it's still not out of the realm of possibility.
I mean more about as a way to get into a foreign country that maybe they wouldn't get that guy
Yeah.
in.
Very much, yeah.
You know what I mean? Secret agent stuff.
Yep.
I don't doubt that happens for a minute.
Well,
I don't either.
we already have a mechanism in the U.S. for there to be secret surveillance, and that's through the FISA courts. I mean, how do we know? Not to be completely crazy here, but how do we know that there hasn't already been some sort of a subpoena authorized that says, listen for these keywords, and if you hear them, drop it, give us a call over here at Homeland Security or whatever. There's nothing technically that would prevent that from happening.
Nope.
It would be too much work.
It
Too
would
much
be
information.
It would be difficult. Yeah. It would be very difficult.
It would be so difficult to the point where it would be impractical.
I could buy that. Yeah.
It would be a fishing expedition in terms of warrants. It probably wouldn't be one that a judge would approve of, even though the judge was acting secretly.
Well, the FISA directives are such that they have to have a specific target, just like going after any warrant. They have to have a specific target in terms of entity and intent and the sort of information we're looking for. So blanketing, no, I don't think they could ever get a FISA warrant for that.
It is
That
possible.
doesn't mean that the NSA or the CIA wouldn't do it. Fuck a warrant. They just do it themselves, and probably do. In fact, we know for a fact that NSA did for some time, and they've supposedly stopped doing it. And I believe that like that. What they did is they changed the shingle on the building.
Well, there's a famous example of this. Back when background checks first became required for gun purchases, there was supposed to be a process where there would be an FBI background check performed, and then the FBI was supposed to delete all that information, so there wouldn't be a record of who owned guns. And then several years later, when people wanted to start tightening up on gun control laws, the FBI said, "Oh, my stars and garters, we forgot to destroy that information. It's still here. We can use it."
Isn't this wonderful? Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Gee, did we screw up? Oh, we're sorry. So I don't know. All the more reason that I'm sitting here saying, I think I'll wait a little bit longer to buy a Google Home or a.
Yeah, I'll just open the refrigerator and look on the shelf if I need to know what's in there. Count myself lucky that, unlike my grandfather, I don't have to go to town and buy a block of ice every time I want to keep some milk overnight.
It's very seductive to have this vision of the future where we just, it's like on the Starship Enterprise where you say, "Computer, do this," or "Computer, do that," or the house of the future, lights on, lights off, and some computer's listening and hears you, but there's a cost to that, a privacy cost. Anyway, now that we've proven that we're a bunch of crotchety old men.
I just want a robot to stand out on my front porch and scream at the kids to get off my friggin' lawn.
Hey, that's a theme with you today. Oh man. Well, I just learned something I didn't know about you. You've got a wall around your house apparently down there in Mexico.
14 feet.
Can we start calling it the compound?
14 feet with sharp spikes around the edge.
I might do that too if I live there.
I think it's there to keep me in, though.
We should ask your wife. Is this like a to keep Doc in the house? Well, anyway, there was one interesting other aspect of that. Whatever the article was, the blog post, your search journey. That was about the topic of or the idea of topics in knowledge panels. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
I think I skipped over really quickly.
I'm not sure what.
I skipped it and then went back and read it because it was pretty interesting. I went back and read it with some detail. Yeah, I saw that the word that they were using was topics, and I think also they mentioned concept, which to me I tend to read that as context, but typically I get technically context and concept are really different in this context. But it's an interesting blog piece.
Yeah,
I found it interesting.
There's this last bit at the very end. Let's see, what did it say? Let's see. This will make it easier than ever to explore your interests, even if you don't have your next search in mind yet. I added yet.
That's kind of creepy, eh?
Well,
Query list parameters?
I didn't say that. At least I don't think so. At least I didn't.
It's sort of like the news feed that they're adding to the homepage in Google mobile devices.
I missed that, I guess.
They're like Google now does. It collects information about your interests and just turns news stories up about what it thinks you're interested in. So they're query list search.
I know what you're talking about. The funny thing is I don't spend that much time on my mobile phone, and especially not on the Google app as opposed to the Chrome app, to even really pay much attention to that or notice it. I had to stop and think what you were talking about. But I know mobile's a big deal, so maybe I'm.
That which brings up a question. I wasn't looking for it. Maybe it said something in that post. Is this something that they're intending to only start doing with mobile, or is it perhaps going to also roll over into desktop?
Which part?
Possibly
the topic
both.
The topic list queries, yeah.
Didn't say that.
That's sort of. It didn't say anything about that, did it?
No.
Okay. I mean, I would wonder. I'm seeing more and more things where they're hinting that this is something we're going to do now because it's so good for mobile searches. It's so good for mobile users. That it seems to be like desktop users are getting less and less time in their thought processes and perhaps in their implementation.
We're not getting the goodies.
Yeah, well, not so much the goodies as even to be taken into consideration. And I think that's a mistake because all these businesses that have 1,200 employees, they're not all sitting at their desk in their cubicle with their friggin' smartphone in their hand. A lot of things are done on desktop, and I think I'm seeing just enough to concern me that desktop is fading in importance in Google's eyes. And I understand that the mobile is growing and certainly deserves attention, but I don't think it should be at the expense of desktop.
I think they're taking the phrase mobile first seriously. Yeah. When I see a patent that covers something new from Google, the examples they show in the drawings show the stuff on mobile devices first.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're not just planning on implementing them only on mobile devices. They're showing it off there as a first step.
I hope. Yeah. Because like I said, I have my state-of-the-art 4S here. I figure I'll get another 10 years out of this puppy. It'll probably be an implant by the time I get my 6.
Build it into contact lenses.
There you go. I don't know if you saw it. I can't remember the name of the. It's ARS Tech. There was a post about they've actually done that in Japan. They actually came up with something that is functionally is the same as Google Glass.
Yeah.
In contact lenses.
Interesting.
And probably cost $1 million, but just from a proof of concept type thing, they've actually done it, and it's a contact lens that you could see on the guy's eye. You could see that there was texture in what would be the iris.
Wow.
That was not human iris. Okay, but
there's a San Diego State University professor who writes science fiction, and he wrote one book that's about 10 years from now in our future that includes people wearing contact lenses with Windows operating systems built in. And you choose your theme, and that tells you what you see the world around you like.
Bringing your meaning to rose-colored.
So are you seeing it in a medieval concept or a Wild Wild West concept?
Or a Jurassic Park concept.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
I think I've been in that bar.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's kind of freaky stuff.
It would actually be interesting, especially if you think about it, how would you direct all that? It would have to be thought directed, right?
Possibly in some degree, depending on where you gaze. If your iris moves upwards so that you're looking up, that might act as input.
Now, this guy, he had an interface on the sleeve of his shirt. So basically, it was just display, like Google Glass, okay? But, they do have skin-type receptors now where they can pick up certain signals, by placing electrodes on your body in certain places. And, there's some amazing stuff in prosthetics that use that type of stuff.
I was just thinking that when you were saying. Yeah.
So
they've built electronic tattoos as input devices.
Yeah, I saw something on that. That's fascinating.
Like microphones and things like that.
Wow.
Yep.
That sounds like a sci-fi movie from 10 years ago.
And things like this contact lens, for instance, it does have a power supply. It's like I think they said it was 30 millivolts power supply. And it has a battery. And it is wirelessly recharged by something the guy is carrying.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. It's interesting, and it gets the juices flowing with sort of things that could be conceivable. Now, what's practical is often a different thing, but it's interesting. I'm pretty sure that was Ars Technica where I saw that article.
Interesting. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so back to the original Google Glass, glasses, whatever they were called. Was that another one of these gigantic Google experiments in real life?
People are still using Google Glass, but they're using it in enterprise settings.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
It's supposedly really helpful when you're doing technical work, like repairing a jet engine, and you need a technician to help you, so you can show them what you're working on, and they can help you, tell you what you need to fix. It's useful in medical settings, surgeons and doctors.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There was a card-based UI that I remember being talked about back then as possibly the next big thing, because there were small enough bits of information that you could see them easily on that kind of a screen. And at the time, I remember seeing that kind of a card-based approach being used in a few settings where it was sort of surprising, like some visual aids at my church and things like that were done in that kind of a format. But I don't hear anything about that anymore. I guess maybe it's not surprising since it's not that widespread news now. But
I think wait till the Internet of Things becomes more common.
Mm-hmm.
oh, but if I listen to Doc, I'm not going to go anywhere near that stuff. So.
You may not be able to avoid it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the case.
Look at our cars. I mean, new cars. Good Lord. My dad bought a new Ford Focus last year before. And it's amazing what that car has. And that's a mainstream,
Well, about a month and a half ago, I was sitting out on the balcony, and my daughter's car was parked on the curb in front of the house rather than the driveway. And the neighbors across the street were having some kind of a get-together, and somebody shows up in this big SUV and is parking in front of her there's a driveway right in front of where the front of her car was, and then on the other side of the driveway there's another spot of curb. So he's parking there, but he was about maybe a meter out from the curb, so he's backing up to get closer to the curb, and I'm watching him, and he's backing and backing and backing until he finally bumps into her front bumper. So I holler at the asshole, and I go down before he can take off to see if there's any damage, and he got out of the car, very apologetic, very decent guy, but his immediate response was, it didn't tell me there was a car there. So he's got the backup camera, and he has a system that I don't know if it audibly or if it gives him a voice or just a ping that it's getting proximity alarm to something. And he was depending upon that rather than these beautiful shiny fucking mirrors that stick out both sides of this fucking car. God forbid I should step back into the 20th century and use a mirror to see where I'm backing up to a car that I just pulled my car past 20 seconds ago. Okay.
I have to confess, I for the first time, I have a car that has backup camera in it. I got it a couple of years ago, but I rely on it a lot now instead of looking in the mirrors. I'm guilty of that. However, it's a Honda. It has little sort of like guides imposed over the video, and I can tell how close I am to something. So I'm more aware than that, I guess. There's no proximity detector.
Yeah, it's just it just blew my mind that the guy had become so dependent upon his camera or a proximity alarm that he couldn't use the mirror when he just pulled past this car. He knows it's there.
Yeah.
Or was he depending upon the car to, when he was going forward too? I don't know.
Or was he thinking about the party and not
I don't know. But didn't do any damage. But it just blew my mind that you're driving a $70,000 SUV just back into a $30,000 car because you can't bother yourself to glance up at the mirror. Fuck. Get off my lawn.
I was waiting for it. I really was.
I knew you were. I didn't want to disappoint you, Tim.
Oh boy. It's funny that all came up in the context of Halloween on the dojo chat earlier today. I'm thinking, you know what? I live in a neighborhood where I don't think anybody even celebrates Halloween anymore. Nobody ever, has kids come by. Nobody has candy or anything. It's kind of funny how all that has changed.
They still go around in our neighborhood, but for some strange reason, I can't imagine why, they never knock on our door.
Well, the 14-foot. Gee, I don't know, Doc.
I don't think they like the reception they get.
Well, oh yeah. Now, if I had little kids, like I've got, my oldest grandson has two little boys, 5 and 3, I think, in age. And boy, if I had those kids, I don't know what I would do in terms of taking them out trick or treating. I would only go places where I knew people,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've seen shopping centers.
Yeah, they do
give
that.
that candy.
Mm-hmm.
They do that, and churches usually have some kind of an alternative thing too. But Now, my grandson and his wife and kids live on or near a military base, and so I think they probably would feel safer going to base housing too for that.
Sure.
But
I used to have a little sommelier's cup, like a jigger I could hang around my neck, and the adults would trick or treat from door to door. We get pretty lit in about 2 blocks, I'm telling you.
Saves those long walks to the fridge, eh?
Yeah.
Well, you end up mixing about 12 different kinds of liquor, so it doesn't make for a long evening.
Oh, crazy.
Now, Canada, they can do that with doobies.
Well, California too now.
Oh, yeah, true.
I guess it's not legal to sell it yet here because they haven't figured out the way to tax it or something.
How they can get their cut. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's what it was all about anyway. So.
They even have tests up here to test roadside.
Seriously?
For impaired driving,
Right.
They have a roadside test already.
Well, I never thought about that. We have drunk driving checkpoints, surprise checkpoints here. I suppose they'll start testing for, whatever.
Definitely they will. Yeah. Canadian company developed the device to do it.
Really?
Yeah, in anticipation of probably the cops needing it in October 17th.
Good thinking.
So you make a gesture like it's something that fits over a person's mouth.
I'm not sure. I was wondering about that.
It is. It's not a blood test.
How can they detect that from your breath?
Especially if you eat something that's laced.
I don't know.
With blood.
That's just on TV. The pictures they're showing it looks almost exactly like a breathalyzer test. Like here, you can't stick a needle in a guy to test his blood without his permission. Yeah. So the cops can't force you to do it.
I don't know enough about the technology and the biology involved. So.
Yeah.
What they've did in California, for instance, for testing for drunk drivers, is if you refuse the breath test or the blood test, then that is
admission.
Going to cost you your license. It is going to cost you a guilty finding on impairment. It's also going to cost you a license because one of the clauses of getting a license is that you will submit to that if required. But
I don't know if all states are like that, but definitely California.
I don't know about all states. Probably most, I would think. But I know in Texas, for instance, you could refuse one or the other, but you had to accept one or the other.
Well, in Texas, you used to be able to drive with an open container.
I did it many times, Pull up to the stop with a bottle of Jack in your hand. Hey, officer, how's it going? As long as you're not over 0.8. In fact, I think back then it was a 1.0. But thank God they finally did away with that.
I well remember flying back to visit the guy that was my childhood best friend when he lived in Austin, and he'd meet me at the airport. I'd get in the car, and he'd hand me an open, Coors or whatever it was, and say, "Drink up," Crazy. No longer though, not in Texas anymore. So
nope. One of the smartest things they did.
Yeah. Well. Guys, I got to go. I got something coming up. So
we've got to call it a day. It's top of the hour.
All right.
So say goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see you.
Don't do anything I wouldn't. Leave it.
That doesn't narrow the field much, Terry.
Take care now.